Welcome back to Two Idiots One Podcast. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Bailey. And before we start today, Taylor, there's something that I want to talk to you about.
Oh shit, you threw a curveball. But I guess go ahead. What do you got to say, Bailey?
I'm somebody now, Taylor. Everybody likes me, and soon millions of people will see me and they'll all like me. I like the way I feel. I like thinking about the red dress and the television and you and your father. Now when I get the sun, I smile. That's all I got.
You know, I'm saying this as your friend. Are you on drugs?
No, but it's very reasonable for you to think that, since that is a quote from a drug addict in the movie we're doing today.
Oh, you mean the 2000 film by Darren Aronofsky?
I don't think that's how it's pronounced.
No, I always fuck up his. It's Aronofsky. Aronofsky.
Yeah.
Darren Aronofsky. I always fuck up his last name. The same dude that did Hereditary.
Really?
Yeah, he did Hereditary. You don't know that? Midsummer.
I did not realize that it was the same guy.
Yeah, Darren Aronofsky.
Man, I really like old Darren Aronofsky more than new Darren Aronofsky.
The 2000 film, directed by Darren Aronofsky, Requiem For A Dream.
Starring Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, Ellen Burstyn.
Is that how you say that?
I'm not sure. Is it Burstyn? I believe so.
Yeah, because I want to say Burston, and I think that would be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, Burstein I think would be good. I don't know. As you can tell on this, and this also stars Marlon Wayans, which I really want to point that out. Okay.
That's what I was going to say. I wasn't intentionally trying to cut him off. It's just we were talking about how to pronounce Ellen Burstyn's last name.
Yeah, I was like, you can't cut him off, dude, because he is probably one of the most important people in this movie, because this is the first time I ever remember him in a serious role.
This is the only serious role I can think of for him. He's been in a lot of comedic movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he was in the Scary Movies.
Yeah, he was the weather.
Yeah. So that is the role I remember him from. When I think about him, that's where I see him. And this is the first time I've watched this movie in a number of years, and I didn't remember he was in it. And it was really surprising. It caught me very off guard because I was like, oh. I was like, he's a super funny guy. I was like, what the fuck is he doing in this movie?
Because this movie's not funny at all. This was also written by Darren Aronofsky. And I didn't know this until we started doing research for it. Hubert Selby Jr. wrote the book. Like, this is based off of a book. Which leads me to another thing. Why are we doing movies based off of books?
I've noticed that this is like the 5th or 6th one in a row.
I think so.
Because we had American Psycho, Fight Club, Annihilation.
Technically, we did Trainspotting, but that one will be released later because
technical issues.
We fucked up the audio on that one. So that one is coming, and then this one would be Requiem. Because we'll release Trainspotting next. So The Lodge was that breaking point where it wasn't in there.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, that was just like a one-off. We had an off week.
Yeah, we had an off week, and we're experimenting with soundboards and trying to get things. We were trying to spice up the podcast, and we fucked it up a little bit.
Yeah, but these things happen. So Taylor, on a scale from 1 to 5, what would you give this movie? 1 being a horrible, horrible movie that made your eyes bleed and caused you emotional distress in a negative way the whole time you were watching it. And 5, normally I would say, is just a really good movie that you really enjoyed. But because of this movie, I'm going to alter the requirements to get a 5 and say that it doesn't necessarily have to be a pleasant experience, but just makes you feel.
So I'm not going to say that. I'm going to go with, if I rate a movie a 5, it means that I've watched it multiple times and will continue watching it multiple times. This is not one of those movies. This is the second viewing. I own this movie. Like, I just want to say before I give my score that the first time I saw this movie, I was in middle school. And this is the second time I've watched it. It's not a movie that I put in every fucking 6 months and go, oh, this will be good. It's not Pulp Fiction. With that being said, I really, really like this movie because of several factors. it is extremely depressing and hard to watch. And because of that, I'm going to give it a 4. Like a solid 4 out of 5. It could have been a 5 out of 5 if it was one of those that I would watch, that I watch again. It would be the same reason why we'll never do it, but Martyrs would be a 4 out of 5.
We might do Martyrs someday.
Okay. We can release it as like a bonus episode where you can pay to listen to that one. But no, I think that it's a 4 because, first of all, old Darren Aronofsky is great. I think.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off. I think that new Darren Aronofsky's good. Like Midsommar and Hereditary were both good movies. They were just a totally different flavor.
Well, yeah, I said great. Okay, I don't think that Hereditary and Midsommar are directed the same way. There are a lot of shots in this movie that I really don't see nowadays, and I felt like he was more experimental and did things that you don't really see. Like he did shots that kind of were there but weren't there at the time, you know what I'm saying? And he really capitalized on a few things that I enjoyed, whereas now it's more of he's found his stride, this is what he does, this is Darren Aronofsky. Because if you take Hereditary and Midsommar and put them together, stylistically they're pretty much the same. But if you take both of those movies and put it with Requiem, stylistically they're in two totally different sports, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I like it. And the dialogue, fantastic. The directing, fantastic. The acting, fantastic. The story, dear fucking God, that is dark. But yeah, I would say because of that, I would give it a 4 out of 5. It has potential to be a 5 out of 5, but I can't justify it because I've only seen it twice, and it'll probably be another 6-7 years before I see this movie again. But with that being said, what would you give it?
So I would give it a 5, which me saying that isn't necessarily saying I'm recommending that you go watch it if you haven't seen it, although I am recommending you go watch it. However, I'm going to put stipulations on that. I think that if you're in a good headspace and you aren't suffering from any hard like mental health crises or drug dependencies that you might not feel great about internally, I think it would be a good movie. I think that if you do have any of that going on, you probably ought not watch it because it might make those issues worse. It might exasperate it. But if you're totally like mentally healthy, not addicted to any drugs, and you're comfortable glimpsing into the darkness that some people have in their lives, then it would be a fun movie to watch. I'm using the word fun loosely, though.
You're using it very loosely because I'm in a good headspace and I watch this movie and it brings me to a dark place.
Oh, yeah. No, I watched this movie today and there were 3 separate points where I was almost in tears, at least tearing up a little bit just because it was sad. It was a little too much. And I'm in a good headspace as well.
Which is why, I agree. And with your modification, I had a feeling you were going to give it a 5 based off of the way that you said it doesn't need to make you feel good to be a 5.
Yeah. Well, no, this movie makes me feel horrible. I don't get any. In a lot of things, redemption is what you're looking for. You watch a lot of movies and you want the good guys to win. You want, the right things to happen. But this movie, there are no good guys. There is no winning. It's just a glimpse into their lives on this downward spiral and allowing you to, take it in. It's not about making you feel good. It's not about showing happiness and a wholesome family and love and joy. It's about showing you depravity and the lengths that some people will go to satisfy their perceived needs.
This is one of those movies where I feel like the DARE program failed because it never showed anybody this movie. If you had watched this movie, you would immediately be like, oh, maybe drugs are bad. I watch this movie and don't want to do drugs at all. I look at it as, oh, drugs are awful. I don't even want to drink. But I watch something like Train Spotting and I go, hey, maybe drugs aren't too bad,
I just want to cut Taylor off for a second. We taken 3 shots before we started recording this pod. So him saying I don't want to drink is him playing you guys for fools.
No. I don't want to drink when I watch that movie. I didn't drink during that movie. I sat there and watched the whole thing. Did I drink after? Yeah, but I won't drink during.
Okay, that's fair.
See, that's what I'm saying. But what do you think Roger Ebert gave it?
I have no idea. Knowing them, they probably gave it like a 2.5 on their scale.
Well, no, this is actually Roger Ebert because this movie came out when he was still alive.
So probably like a 3 on his scale, 3.5 on his scale.
You're correct. It is a 3.5. And
I don't know if that counts because I did guess wrong twice before that.
Well, no, because you guessed on the context of it was written by somebody else.
I mean, that's fair because his Fight Club score to me is unreasonably low, and that was given by him.
And that, again, this is the thing that I point out when people are like, oh, you like Roger Ebert. No, I don't, because I don't fucking understand how he gives this a 3.5 out of 4. And I don't remember what he gave Fight Club, but it was lower than it should have been.
I think it was a 2.5.
Was it 2.5?
I believe so.
Okay, because I was like 2.5 or 3.
Which, if making you feel is the criteria we're using, I would say that this is probably a better movie than Fight Club, simply because I love Fight Club and I think it's really fun to watch. This movie hurts me. Like, the first time I saw this movie, I thought about it for years afterward. And I watched it today, and I might never watch it again, but I'm never going to stop thinking about it. You know what I mean?
Well, but you said feel, and when you watch Fight Club, you feel something. It's enjoyment. It's fun, right? Like it's the fun feeling of dudes beating the shit out of each other. And in this movie, you don't feel that. But without getting into it, because we're gonna get into it, what would be your spoiler-free review, Bailey? Since you've been throwing me curveballs this whole episode, I'm gonna let you do the spoiler-free review.
So if I had to give a spoiler-free review for Requiem for a Dream, I would say that it's a remarkable glimpse into the perspective of 4 different individuals as they tread downward on a path of addiction and the various troubles that come with it. And one thing I really like about it is a majority of it is accompanied by Lux Eterna, which is the same song in the trailer. And that's how you know that a key scene is happening. But it's 4 paths that are all crossed in one way or another as they travel downwards through addiction.
I mean, that's a lot better than what I was going to say.
What were you going to say?
So if I was to give a spoiler-free review of this, if you watch Train Spotting and went, oh, you can't get more fucked up within anything, oh, you can. This movie came out, you were wrong. If you ever listened to 9 Inch Nails' The Downward Spiral and been like, that's fucking depressing, I wonder if we can make it more depressing. We can. It's called this movie.
Oh, yeah.
If you took Train Spotting and 9 Inch Nails' The Downward Spiral and put them together, if you watched Train Spotting while listening to that album, it would be this movie.
Not quite. It's not quite as depressing as this movie.
This movie's depressing.
Well, okay, so this is a mild spoiler for Train Spotting.
There is no spoilers for Train Spotting.
Train Spotting ends on a mildly happy note, like a perceivably happy note. Like I said earlier, there is no retribution in this movie. It sucks. Like, there's no happy ending. Nobody gets away clean. Nobody's happy at the end. Everybody gets fucked.
Yeah, the downward spiral, but there's also fun parts of the downward spiral, right? Where you're like...
Right, that's why I'm saying that both of those aren't as grim as this. This is honestly one of the grimmest looks into that lifestyle, because most movies have some redemption or some happy note or some optimistic something. That's absent from this movie.
I can see what you're saying with that. But I mean, without further ado, because I just kind of want to get into the spoilers, because I feel like we're so close to it. Future Taylor, because you're going to be the one that's editing this episode, because you're lifting the burden from Bailey.
It's not a burden.
Roll the music. Future Taylor, that was so good.
Congratulations on inserting the music.
It'll be so much better when we use Adobe to audition. This movie's so fucking dark. And who is the... Okay, so we had a sad character in Train Spotting, right? Who do you think's the saddest character in this movie? Because I know who I would pick.
It depends on what your perspective is. Because for me, I would say that it's Sarah Goldfarb or Ellen Burstyn. And that's because when she got addicted to the weight loss pills and when she first started down this path, we saw the beginning and she didn't know what was happening. Like by the time that Jared Leto's character came and was like, yo, mom, you're addicted to uppers. They're really bad. This is not something you should be taking. It was already too late. Whereas when the movie begins, we see everyone else is already addicts. So it's hard to be like, oh, they're someone who should have my sympathy. But Ellen wasn't a drug addict. She was a lonely, sad old woman who thought she was going to be on TV and wanted to fit in her pretty dress that her deceased husband liked. So her story is, like, it's all tragic. This whole movie is a tragedy. But her story to me is the most tragic.
No, and I agree, because I would say that everybody has a story as to the varying levels of addiction. I would say out of everybody, literally Tyrone, played by Marlon Wayne, would be the only one that is... I would say that he would be less addicted than everybody. If I took everybody and put them side by side, I would say that he's the one that would be the least addicted, because he can function normally. But if you look at Sarah, right? Sarah is the most tragic because her whole goal is really nice. Because, and I think that it's really, before I get to that, do you think, well, no, we'll get to that. She wants to be on TV, right? Her whole goal is to lose weight, to get into a sentimental dress that her deceased husband, the father of her son, loved her in. So it brings back these memories because she's lonely. She's not very high on herself. All she wants to do is spend time with her son. All her son wants to do is get high in any way that he can and wants to make it big. But he wants to do it while getting high. I think that Tyrone can look at it differently and not get high. But when you take in, Marion Silver, I think she's also a little bit tragic too, because she's the rich girl. She's the Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah.
I'm going to call her the Lindsay Lohan of this movie. I think that she has potential and has everything in the world, but because she's always had everything in the world, she needs to self-destruct. She is on self-destruct, and I would argue she has the worst fate out of everybody in the movie. We'll get to that one, because I think that she does. But I would say that Sarah is by far the saddest, most tragic story, because her intentions are pure and good, and she's the naive one, because she gets so wrapped up in losing weight that she develops a drug addiction and eating disorder at the same time. But she doesn't mean to. She doesn't get high on purpose. She doesn't seek out the appetite suppressors, the weight loss pills.
Well, no, she does seek them out.
But hold on, but not for the intention of getting high, for the intention of being on uppers. Like, she seeks out pills to lose weight because she doesn't have the self-control to be able to look at the fridge and not go open it. Because she tries that for like 24 hours, and then one of her friends says, oh, well, you just didn't go to the right doctor because my daughter went to the doctor and he then gave her pills. Okay, and now she's like super skinny. And that's the issue, right? If she would have had the self-control, it would have been okay. But she doesn't, and because of that, she seeks drugs unintentionally. Because she doesn't think that they're drugs. I don't think that she ever views them as uppers. She views them as speed. But as soon as Harry comes in the picture, as soon as he figures out what she's on, he goes, "You're doing fucking speed, Ma. You need to quit."
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes her tragic. Everybody else, you could argue, was asking for it, and there were numerous times where Harry and Tyrone got into really sticky shit. People died in front of them, and they still continued doing what they were doing, knowing full well what would happen. And, Jennifer Connelly, who, if you have ever looked at Jennifer Connelly and been like, oh, she's really hot, watch the end of this movie, you'll think differently.
No, I mean, you could still see the end of this movie and still think she was really hot.
No. Okay, look, the image, and I guess maybe it's like the context of it,
Oh no, it feels dirty.
No, it doesn't feel dirty. It doesn't feel dirty at all. It feels horrible. Like, I don't enjoy watching that. It's not.
No, I don't misinterpret me. I don't enjoy watching it, but I could see how it could be enjoyed.
The only time where you could be like Jennifer Connelly naked in this movie is cool is when she's doing the really weird,
Checking herself out in the mirror thing.
but she's not really like checking her, like I don't know what she's doing because it looks like she's checking herself out, but she's not, and she's kind of just waving her arms staring at herself.
It's called drugs, Taylor. You got to be cool. Just kidding. I'm not advocating drug use. If anything, doing this movie is the opposite.
No.
But yeah, no, she's just on drugs. That's what people on drugs do. They look at themselves in the mirror for hours, I guess, because I don't know. I think they guess it thinks it looks cool.
Well, no, and I know that, and I really like this scene, and it's one of the scenes that stands out. Not only because you can see Jennifer Connelly's bush, but it is because it is because the first scene that you see with her, she's kind of staring at herself in a disgusted way, where she's judging her body, and then cuts to the scene of her doing what she's doing.
What's she doing?
I don't know, because the way they do these drug scenes, I never fucking know what they're doing. Like, she's doing some type of drug, and I don't know who's doing what. So there's like cocaine is what it looks like being snorted. It looks like heroin's being shot up. I don't know, because it all goes very quickly, and then pupils dilate, and it's a rush. It is a rush at one time. So she's doing something, I don't know, drugs, and then looks at herself in this way of, I love myself. I am a beautiful goddess. I can do anything, instead of, oh, you fat piece of shit, I hate you.
Yeah.
And I really love that scene, but maybe that's just me.
No, I mean, I get that.
But I've never looked at the end of this movie and been like, oh, Jennifer Connelly going ass to ass with some girl on a double-ended dildo with a bunch of rich white people standing around throwing money on her because she knows that the only reason she's doing this is so she can get some fucking heroin, was hot.
No, I mean, I don't think it was hot at all. But that being said, I can recognize that some people would be into something like that.
Well, yeah, everybody watching is into it.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, that's why I'm saying you can't say that, oh, it's a horrible, horrible thing. It is a horrible thing, especially with the context of the situation. But I'm not demonizing the activity, because if that's something that you're into, by all means, go for it. I think that that type of stuff should be totally okay. But in the context, it's super fucked up and not pleasant.
And I don't want to. If you want to go ass to ass on a double-ended dildo with somebody while people throw money at you, do it. That's fine. I don't care. More power to you. But if you're doing it for the sole intent of doing drugs and you're not actually enjoying it, you're just doing it to get drugs, no, you shouldn't do it. That's fucked up.
Okay, so yeah, we're 100% in agreement. I just wanted to make sure I got that point across so that someone didn't hear that clip and be like, oh, Two Idiots One Podcast thinks that you shouldn't be allowed to ass dildo yourself with your buddy. Because I think you should be able to ass dildo yourself with your buddy, unless you're only doing it for drugs.
Yeah, like, do whatever you want to do. Okay,
Yes.
like, that's fine. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody and you enjoy what you're doing and the other person enjoys what they're doing, go for it. But it's very obvious that both of these women do not enjoy what they are doing.
Absolutely right there with you. Glad we got that point across. Please continue.
But yeah, how you really do that? No, but and that's why it's tragic, right? Because you even see it after, in like that final shot of her curling up with her bag of heroin, like it is her baby, her prized possession. She's fucking Gollum in Lord of the Rings, and it's sad. I mean, you look at Harry and his arm gets cut off, but Harry did that to himself.
Yeah, no,
I don't feel bad for him.
I think that Jared Leto's character Harry is also very tragic, but I don't feel he's the only character in this out of the four main characters. He's the only character who I don't see their fate and go, oh, that's a little fucked up. Because he's the one who I think not necessarily got what he deserved, because I don't think anyone should lose their arm, but he's the one who clearly saw where his life was going.
And didn't fucking care.
Yeah, and by the time he decided to do something about it, it was clearly too late. Whereas everyone else, you could say ignorance is the reason they ended up where they ended up.
Well, everybody did it for different reasons, right? Sarah did it because she wanted to be on TV and look skinny. Well, no. Well, hold on. Hear me out, okay? She
Oh.
wants to be on. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I don't know why you're looking at me like that. She wants to be on TV and she wants to be skinny. Harry is greedy and wants money. Tyrone wants to make his mom proud. That's it. That's all he cares about is making his mother proud.
He also wants to get high.
He does, but he also wants to make his mom proud. Like, we're focusing on that aspect of it. They all want to get high.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're not, but he wants to make his mom proud, right? And Marion is kind of the tragic rich girl that's had everything. So now that she doesn't have everything, it's messed with her, and she just wants drugs. But I don't think she started out that way. And she says things throughout the movie that make me feel bad for her because she genuinely loves and cares for Harry. You can tell there are some beautiful scenes with the two of them being super high aerial shot where they're like, head to head in the north-south position. Beautiful aerial shot. But after he says, go fuck that one guy for the money because he's so obsessed with getting this money to get the drugs. I just hit the mic. To get the drugs, to make more money, to get more drugs and build a empire of drugs that he literally goes, you go fuck somebody, I don't care, go get me the money.
Right.
And you can tell she doesn't want to do it. Like, she's been like, even the guy that she sleeps with. So when they need the $2,000 or whatever, and she has to sleep with a family friend who is the therapist, I think,
Yeah.
or pretending
The
to be
wealthy
the therapist.
balding guy.
The creepy fucking dude.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to do it. Very obvious that she doesn't want to do it, but Harry's like, you need to do it. And he doesn't care because she's going to get the money, right? He's going to give her the money. He knows that if she sleeps with him, he will get the money. And he needs it to get the supply of drugs. And then when that happens, it is very tragic because she says, can we turn the lights off? Because she doesn't want to see what she's doing. She just wants to get it over with.
Yeah.
And when she comes back into the apartment and they look at each other and then she sits away from him, like does not sit beside him, but sits away from him and creates that distance. That was heartbreaking and tragic.
So while I agree with you entirely that it's heartbreaking and tragic, at least the way I interpreted the way you were talking, you're demonizing Harry or Jared Leto's character.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
I agree.
For that.
I agree that he's a piece of shit. I don't think he's a piece of shit for that though, because it's still her decision. It's not. He doesn't force her. He doesn't call the number for him, or he doesn't call the number for her.
Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the first time, because the second time,
Well, no, even the first time when she's going to get the money, he doesn't force her. He's like, if we want the money, this is one way we could get it. But even before that, when they were in bed, he's like, hey, dog, listen, I'm not trying to shoot up right now. We don't have very much. I'm trying to wait. And she was the one who's pressuring him. And then when he told her, hey, well, just go get it then, or whatever. It's after she gets mad that she's like, you did all the drugs. You're the reason we have no drug. It's because you decided to shoot up last night. This is what she's saying to him. So she's being an asshole. Like, I'm not saying that he's a good guy at all. I'm not saying he is. But to say that he's the bad guy and that she's the tragic character is fucked up, because they're both equally tragic. They both choose their own fate. Like this, he's not being mean. He's not like, fuck you, Jennifer, fuck you, Marion. Jennifer's the actress's name. It's not like that at all. She's like, I'm going to go do this, and fuck you for taking a hit when I took a hit last night.
the second time, I agree. She did that of her own accord, because he starts with the intention of having her do it and then doesn't. He abandons it.
Yeah, he goes to Florida.
And then she picks up the phone and she picks up the piece of paper and calls him, and she does it. Now she's disgusted with herself and doesn't want to do it. And you can tell by the look on her face with everything that she does, but she also really wants to get high. Like, she is the sell your body, get high. That is her. Harry is the I have a hole in my arm, which just means better access for needles. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that in my opinion, that's the hardest scene to watch.
See, I still think the hardest scene to watch is Sarah Goldfarb right before the television version of her and the game show host appear in her house, where the fridge is like freaking out at her.
Why do you think that happened? Because from my understanding of like speed and shit, it shouldn't have made her hallucinate the way that she did.
So I don't think that her hallucinations and stuff were from the speed. I think that it was a combination of her already being a little crazy, because I think she was already a little crazy because of the way she interacted with Harry when he came to steal her TV.
No, the lock's not for you, Harry. It's for the robbers.
Yeah, so because of stuff like that, I think she was probably always a little bit crazy. And then I think taking speed probably exasperated it. And then I think the eating disorder that you mentioned probably made it worse. So I think that her issue was a combination of probably undiagnosed mental illness paired with drugs and an eating disorder.
So what you're saying is she developed this stuff because she had underlying mental health issues that weren't diagnosed, and then because she did this and was already predisposed to it, that she became what she was at the end of the movie, getting the shock therapy, the electroshock therapy.
That would be my assumption, especially because her son is also an addict, that it's probably a genetic thing, but I don't definitively know. That's just my assumption.
Well, it never says how her husband dies.
No, it also doesn't say that, so he could have very easily been a junkie.
Or he could have been depressed and killed himself.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I don't know, and I'm not a doctor, so me saying that that's why I think that she reacted the way she did isn't me giving medical advice, because I'm not a doctor. I don't have medical advice to give. But based on my understanding of mental health issues and drug addiction, I would say that that is probably the case.
Which it is. If you take certain drugs and you have underlying mental health issues like schizophrenia or whatever, it will amplify it and you will never not be schizophrenic. I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, but that's just my assumption.
Well, and no, I think that you are correct. I just wanted you to say it, not me. So because I want you to get some of the glory.
Oh yeah, glory.
Some of the knowledge. But no, I will say the first time I watched this as a kid, I didn't understand the hallucinations and shit. I didn't understand what she was on. Even though he says it, I never really understood why, because I thought that she was on a bunch of acid. And that's why, no, and this is me, because this is why you shouldn't watch this movie in fucking middle school, because I thought that she was on acid or some shit, because the TV was talking to her, people were coming out of the TV, she was hallucinating herself into the TV on the show, and then the refrigerator turns into a monster. So in my mind, oh, she's tripping balls, bro.
See, I don't know. In my mind, she's just having a really, really, really bad anxiety attack. Up until she materializes, her TV version materializes in real life.
And then her apartment becomes a fucking stage and they're getting the cameras
set.
Is that, yeah.
Yeah, up until that, I would just imagine that it's an anxiety attack, because when I have really bad anxiety, all of the noises become super loud, like the noise that the fridge was making was really loud and jarring. And when I start having really bad anxiety, that's how it is for me. Every small drop of a nail, it's super loud and intense. So that's what I would have assumed it was up until the crazy stuff starts happening.
Which, watching this as an adult, I go, okay, well, she probably had underlying schizophrenia, and the eating disorder plus the drugs have caused it to be amplified, and that's what's going on. That would make sense. But again, as a teenager, not knowing what anything was, oh, she's on the mushrooms, even though that's not how that works. But no, and then there's also Tyrone, which we didn't really talk about. Tyrone, he's not really in the movie a lot.
Out of the main characters, I would say that he is the least used, but he has some really good scenes. My favorite Tyrone scene personally is the scene where he is with his supplier, I guess, the deaf guy.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because
that is the only scene in this movie that I laugh every time, and I know I shouldn't laugh.
The reason I laugh at it is always the same. It's that same dialogue where he says,
I will fucking kill you.
Yeah, and then the dude looks at him and says, you fuck me, I got it.
And then immediately that dude dies.
Yeah, because he says...
irony there makes me laugh.
No, and that's the thing. It's the irony of it because as soon as he says, "Oh shit, y'all got a white driver," boom, 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 boom. Like the irony of it, the irony of the whole thing. Like you said, I get it, and that's why it's funny to me. The irony of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's the only scene in this whole movie that I would say, oh, this is a funny scene, you should watch it, is that scene, because it's the only scene in the movie that I thought was funny. Everything else, I'm just like, fuck, fuck, fuck.
Well, and then everything after that, everything when, and this is one of my favorite shots in the whole movie, is when he is running down the alleyway with blood on him, freaking out, and the camera's following him. You see him get arrested and everything, and that's just one of the stylistic choices because it even switches to a POV of him running down the alley, and you can see the cop lights. Like, that's one of my favorites. It also happens with Sarah when she's in the kitchen freaking out. I didn't think that was nearly as good as this one. I think that this was probably the best use of that shot and really makes you... I guess it makes you feel more connected to what's going on because he's like, I don't know, he just got shot, I didn't do it. And you see everything, you see the cop come up and arrest him, and honestly, that's probably my favorite shot of the whole movie. If I had to say my favorite shot of the movie, it would probably be him running down the alley. Will be yours, just out of curiosity.
It's really hard to say. I think that probably one of my favorites is near the beginning of the film when Tyrone and Harry are sitting at like a food place. It looks like an outside food place with the cop next to him, and Harry hallucinates like grabbing the cop's gun. I thought that was funny, or I thought that was a good shot. I thought because it's one of the first times that you see the difference between reality and illusion or unreality, which happens multiple times throughout the film. It happens twice while Harry's in the kitchen. I'm sorry. It happens once while Harry's in the kitchen and he's looking out the window and he sees Marion like at the end of a pier. And that's the first scene that I remember that it shows the difference between reality and unreality. And I thought that was a good shot. I thought it was fun.
I do like those shots. I would say out of those shots, the pier, Marion on the pier is probably my favorite.
Which time? Because the Marion on the pier happens twice.
The first one.
Okay. I like the first one more than the second one as well.
And when I say that I count the first one, I don't really count the second one. But I would say my second favorite shot in this whole movie is when Jared Leto and Jennifer Connelly are laying in bed naked after they fucked each other talking. And it is a split panel. There are two separate panels with two separate close-ups of their faces, but it feels like it feels like one shot where they're laying side by side, which they are, and you can tell sometimes it's a little iffy based off of the way that one of them reaches their arm in, and it kind of almost seems like it's going into the other one, but you can fake it. I really liked that shot. I liked that whole scene, and I think that him using the panel shots in this movie are very good because he does it at the beginning too.
Yeah, the beginning of shot where it's Sarah and Harry and he's stealing her TV. They use shots like that, and I think that it's done really well there too.
I think anytime he does it, it's used very well.
But that brings me, us talking about the beginning of the film and them using that shot brings me to like the next part that I want to talk about, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So the next part, because we talked about that, is the actual opening scene after the interaction between Sarah and Harry when it's showing Harry and Tyrone taking the TV to sell, and it's got the Lux Eterna playing, which is, you know what I'm talking about when I say Lux Eterna. That
I know what you're talking about.
That music is so powerful, and I think that's a really good scene.
No, I agree. I think that is a powerful, and I think the music in this movie is powerful. The score is great, and every time they use that, because that's the same music that was used when he was running down the alley, right?
I think so, and it's also the same music that was done during I guess it's the conclusion of the 4 story arcs.
Yes, it was. And every time that it's used, it's placed perfectly. There wasn't a time in that movie where that was playing and I didn't get an overwhelming sense of dread. Every time that was played, I was immediately like, oh shit, something's gonna happen, and I braced myself. And the fact that I did that just goes to show how great this movie is. Like, it made me physically do something and prepare myself for the tragedy that was going to happen. And a lot of films don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there are a lot of films that just don't understand how to use score and how vital of a role music plays in the feelings you get when you view something.
So totally different genre, but when I talk about score being used well, I always think of Friday the 13th, part 1.
Yes, that was, or Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween's another really good one.
Yeah, both of those movies, I would say, use their score in a way where it is an imminent dread and terror that is coming, and you know it. But I think that there are so many other movies that just miss the mark and do not understand.
This is probably my favorite movie score that I can think of, which might just be a recency bias. But out of all the scores I can think of, this has a really good one. After Hours, I really like their score a lot too.
I liked the After Hours score a lot. Halloween's still my favorite score. I would say, like, Halloween's my ringtone. If you didn't know that, like, I paid money several years ago to get that as a ringtone. And I keep my phone on silent 98% of the time, so I never fucking hear it. But when I do, it brings me joy because it is a great score.
The other 2%?
The other 2% of the time, it's like milk. But no, I would say After Hours had a good one. 28 Days Later had a really good score. This obviously has a really good score. Train Spotting.
I mean, Train Spotting, I think Train Spotting 2 has a better score than Train Spotting 1.
See, I haven't seen that, so I can't attest. Now, when I watch Train Spotting 2, I will probably feel the same way. But for right now, there's only one Train Spotting movie.
I mean, that's fair. We still have to wait like 20 years before you're allowed to watch the second one, though.
I think I've waited long enough. I was alive when the second movie came out. I was not when the first one came out. So if you were wondering how old I am, I'm not that young.
You're pretty young.
I'm not that young. You're not that much older than I am.
I'm pretty geriatric, at least in my mind.
Well, yeah, in your mind, but I don't see you being like super geriatric. But what else do you have about this tragedy, this epic tragedy?
What was your least favorite scene? Like, I know you said the hardest one for you to watch was when Jared Leto was re-injecting himself in his arm. Were there any other scenes where you just had like a hard time watching it?
The entire ending.
The ending like portion when the Lux is playing, and you know it shows Marion going ass to ass, and it shows Tyrone getting locked up, and it shows Jared Leto's arm getting sawed off, and it shows Sarah in the mental hospital getting force fed.
Yeah,
or electroshock treatment, I think is what she's getting during that.
Both, because even the build up to that is and it's not because it's not done really well, because it is.
Well, it being done so well is why it's so hard to watch.
Right, because when Jared Leto is in the prison line or whatever, when he shoots himself in the arm and he's like, oh, my fucking arm, and he goes to the hospital, and I can play the whole thing out, and the doctor sees what's going on and then grabs the vials of morphine on the way out and immediately arrests both of them. You know, that was hard. When they're in the prison line and, you know, he's saying, do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, check. And when Tyrone doesn't answer it correctly according to the racist guard, because he does call him the N-word, when he doesn't answer him correctly and then beats him, that was hard to watch. When I
was going to say, so that's the scene that I was going to talk about. That's probably the hardest scene for me to watch. That's not like overtly something specific that we've already talked about, because obviously him shooting into his hole in his arm is fucked up, and obviously being forced to go ass to ass or whatever is hard to watch. But seeing Jared Leto basically dead, being held or propped up next to Tyrone, and Tyrone getting hit for responding incorrectly is so difficult to watch, because it's like he's in such a fucked up situation. He has basically a dead guy next to him, which he's not dead.
No, he will be dead though, because the infection is spreading. They even make mention of that, and that's why they have to amputate his arm. Like there's no, his arm is gone, and if it goes any longer, he will die. That's hard. Watching him being wheeled in is hard. The phone call that he makes to Marion before when he's going to prison before all this happens and it becomes worse is hard to listen to.
Yeah, I'll come right now.
And then he immediately, like, doesn't, and then she goes. And I think the reason her scene is so hard to watch isn't because of the choices she makes, but more of the people surrounding her and the entertainment and pleasure that they're getting out of this.
Well, the dichotomy between the terror on her face versus the pure ecstasy on their face is terrifying.
And that's why it's hard to watch. It is, because I look at it and look at her face and go, oh, there's no way I'm getting aroused by this at all because she's not enjoying it. And then I look at their face of, oh, this is the hottest thing in the world. Yeah, baby. And it makes me feel gross. Like, I'm not even participating in it and I feel gross. And that's why that scene is hard for me to watch.
No, I'm right there with you. 100% you took the words out of my mouth.
I mean, playing devil's advocate here and saying that it's hard to watch, or because she's like doing when we were playing the devil's advocate and you were talking about how it was her choice. Like, I agree it was her choice and Harry shouldn't be. I was just playing devil's advocate on that one. I want you to know that. But the real reason why that's hard to watch is because of that Jared Leto getting his arm amputated and that aerial shot of him laying there with no arm. I'll always remember the aerial shot of Tyrone curling up, crying, feeling like a disappointment and coming off drugs and knowing that for the rest of his life, this is what it is hard to watch. And one thing I will say is that the final shot of everybody being in bed, curled up, minus Jared Leto, is nice. But watching Sarah get force-fed in various ways, and I think the thing that really makes the first one so hard to watch is how casually these two guys walk in talking. I don't even remember what they're talking about, but it's like
they were talking about some betting on some sports game or something.
It was a fucking sports game where the dude was talking about how much money he won.
Yeah.
And then this person lost and stuff, and it was this conversation that you would be having with your buddies. And then he comes up behind her and almost gets her in a rear naked choke and then shoves food and says, swallow, and is yelling at her.
Well, I mean, the nonchalant nature of these two, I would imagine they're late 20s or early 30s, grown ass men, basically manhandling this probably 60s, 70s, severely underweight woman, to me is fucked up. And being nonchalant and bullshitting about it, I felt agitated for her because I'm sure that that's how some old folks are actually treated in some facilities.
The fact that they go in and do this, like you said, to a severely underweight woman who is obviously having mental issues is fucked up. Watching them force feed her through a tube.
I mean, I agree that force feeding her is hard to watch,
but it's necessary.
The way they do it is fucked up, but I agree it is super necessary because she is very underweight.
And I get that. It's not coming from a standpoint of what they're doing is fucked up. It's more of the nonchalantness of the whole thing there's no humanity to it. It's more of, this is my job, this is what needs to be done, eat, you're annoying, hurry the fuck up. And that's tragic. And then I don't know, that whole final scene where she's laying curled up in bed and you go through and all of them are laying down, doing an aerial shot of everybody being curled up next to something minus Jared Leto because he doesn't have an arm, is beautiful but tragic at the same time. And I think the ending, because up until that point it goes crazy off the rails, but not in a good way, this is real fucking depressing, and you get to see what drugs do to a person. This is it, this is drugs. There is no, this is cool, this is what you should be doing that makes you feel good, because throughout the whole movie they talk about how good it is, right? It's doing it, you see the happiness on their face, they're using it to cover up their pain.
So that's why the quote that I opened with is so important, because the quote that I opened with was Sarah Goldfarb talking to Jared Leto, or Sarah Goldfarb talking to Harry Goldfarb, her son.
That's the first time you've ever said his name. You've called him Jared Leto the whole time.
Well, it's because he's super recognizable, and I've seen so many different things with Jared Leto in it that regardless of who he's playing, I still see him as Jared Leto.
Oh, do you mean how he played Angel Face in the 1999 movie Fight Club that we also did a review on?
Yeah, exactly. Or how he played Mr. Nobody in Mr. Nobody.
Oh, or how he played the lead singer of 30 Seconds to Mars in that band 30 Seconds to Mars.
Or how he played the Joker in Suicide Squad.
Wait, what are you talking about? He didn't do that.
Yeah, he did.
No, he didn't.
But quote I opened with was her talking to him, talking about how she likes the way she feels after he reprimands her for being on uppers. And I think that quote, and it just shows, it encompasses everything about this movie, because it's these people who, us as outsiders looking in, were Jared's character saying, oh, hey, you're doing this thing. We see you doing this thing. You ought not to be doing this thing. And their response is, oh, you might think it's bad, but I like the way I feel. And this whole movie is watching, people shoot up heroin, and people, develop eating disorders, and people sell drugs, and people watching people die. And us just the whole time going, fuck, dude, maybe don't do that. And it's tragic and it's horrible, but they like the way they feel. They're doing it because they want to do it. I don't know. I think that just encapsulates the whole movie.
No, it is. And I think that's a great stopping point, ending on a high note, because you hit the nail on the fucking head, buddy.
Did I? Aw, that's sweet of you to say.
Yeah, no, I think that is the point of the movie. Is it's bad, but I feel good.
I like the way I feel.
And that's what matters. I like the way I feel. I don't care. So with that being said, we'll jump straight into the Taylor talk.
Oh shit, what do you got today, Taylor?
What is a movie that you feel is underrated? And this could be a movie that you've seen recently. It could be one of those movies that you saw as a kid that was like a box office flop at the time. So I'll give an example, okay? You remember the Lara Croft Tomb Raider from the early 2000s, like 2002, 2003? With
Angelina Jolie?
Yeah.
That movie fucking sucked.
Loved it. I think that it is an underrated movie. I think that it's a solid 3.5 out of 5.
Out of 10.
No. 3.5 out of 5. Out of 10, it'd be like a 6 or 7. I think that it is a underrated movie and not nearly as bad as people say it is. Kind of like how I said with like Rob Zombie's Halloween. That would be another one that I would add to the list that's not nearly as bad.
I mean, I said it when we did the Rob Zombie Halloween episode, and I'll say it now. I thought that movie was good when I first saw it, but rewatching it, it fucking sucks, bro.
Okay, so what's one that you maybe, I don't know, rewatched and you thought it was good, or one that you think is underrated? Because Tomb Raider's underrated.
I think X and Pearl, they're both recent movies from this year. I think they're both underrated. I don't know what they're rated, but I'm in a couple different like horror groups on Facebook and a couple different horror groups in like other places, and they don't get the love I feel like they deserve. An older movie that I feel is super underrated that we've done on the podcast is Powder. When we did it on the podcast, I didn't like it as much as I historically did, but I still think that it's underrated. I think Space Jam, the one with Michael Jordan from the 90s, is underrated.
I disagree with you on that one. I think that is a very properly rated movie and everybody knows it.
It's one of the best children's movies, in my opinion, of all time.
It is the best children's movie. Like, I will die on this like hill, but that is the best children's movie of all time.
It's definitely in the top like 5.
Dog, you got Michael Jordan in the fucking Looney Tunes.
Yeah, no, it slaps. It's especially for like our generation or people a little bit older than us. Like, it was made for people a little bit older but it's so good.
The only problem with that movie is R. Kelly. It's the only problem with that movie. Is there anything else wrong with it? No.
But you don't believe you could fly?
No, I'm not into R. Kelly. Will be another movie that I think is like really underrated.
Oh, we were talking about movies before we started recording, just like movies that we like. I don't remember what it's called now, but there's a movie from '86 that has Keanu Reeves in it.
River. Fuck, it was one that I didn't know. But you thought that was underrated.
Yeah, River's Edge.
River's Edge, yeah.
From 1986 with Keanu Reeves. I think that's a good movie that's underrated. I don't know what it's rated, but I thought it was solid when I watched it.
Well, I'm talking like underrated, like a lot of people haven't seen it.
If we're talking about underrated, like a lot of people haven't seen it, if you haven't seen Barbarian, I think you ought to go watch it.
Well, and that could be underrated. Like, a lot of people haven't seen it, or it wasn't really well received and needs, like, it's better than what you thought. Like, that's why when you said Space Jam, I'm like, oh, everybody's seen Space Jam. Everybody loves Space Jam. I don't You know, if you had said, "Oh, Space Jam 2," I would have stopped the podcast and beat the shit out of you.
Okay, so one that's underrated that is another recent one is the live action Tom and Jerry movie with Chloe Moretz, I think. I don't
Chloe Grace Moretz.
That might be. Yeah, that's her. That one was surprisingly good.
I didn't even know they did a live action.
Yeah, it came out in 2020 or 2021. That being said, I think she's very pretty, so that might be why I thought it was really good. Although I don't think that influenced my score that much. I'd probably give it like a 3 or so, which for a live action children's movie is pretty good.
I mean, I grew up with her. Like, I would say that she's one of those that I'm pretty confident, like a year or two older than she's basically our age.
Yeah.
And the first real movie I remember watching her in where I was like, oh, I love this girl was Let Me In.
That makes sense. The American remake, obviously. Or I guess the original was Let the Right One In.
Yeah. And that was the first movie I saw her in, and I was like, oh, this girl's great. Kind of like how I feel about Jenna Ortega.
Have you seen Wednesday yet?
No, I was going to talk about it, but it's on my list.
I haven't seen it.
That was one of the things I was going to talk about, like, you know, things that have come out that I'm excited for.
Well, I think that would be fun is if we decided to pick a series or something like that. Not necessarily Wednesday because I haven't heard a bunch of great things about it.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't give a fuck what people are saying about it because it's got Jenna Ortega in it, and I'm again in love with Jenna Ortega. Same with Mia Goth.
Yeah, no, right. So because she's in it, I'm definitely gonna watch it. However, I've talked to a couple different people about it. Some people are like, "Oh, it's super solid, you would like it," and other people are like, "Oh, it's a little childish, you might get bored."
That's the Addams Family. Like, I think that's a statement that's irrelevant because that's the Addams Family. You're not going to watch a R-rated version of the Addams Family because it doesn't fucking exist.
Well, it's the same with like the Munsters and stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to find a, you know, R-rated Munsters where they're like, oh, I'm going to fucking kill you.
Even if it's directed by Rob Zombie.
Yeah, that's the greatest example. The Rob Zombie Munsters is like PG. Okay, not R, PG. And this is coming from the dude that makes
House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, 3 from Hell, Halloween, Halloween 2.
Exactly, and that's my thing. So I'll watch it because of her.
No, I feel that.
Oh, another movie I think that's like criminally underrated that a lot of people haven't seen is Martyrs. I'm very high on that one. I think a lot of people are too. But honestly, this might be a little controversial. Nymphomaniac.
I mean, I don't know if that's controversial. Everyone I know who's seen it, everyone I know who is willing to watch a movie like that with the subject matter that it encompasses has enjoyed it. That being said, a majority of people I know wouldn't watch it simply because of what it's about, even if it was the best movie that's ever been made. They would be like, oh, it's about sex. I don't want to watch a movie that is only about sex.
So, fun fact, I got introduced to that movie because back in the day, if you didn't know this, and I don't know if I can say it, Netflix, when it first started streaming, had porn. Like, that might be something a lot of people don't know, but there were porn videos that you could stream on Netflix. And because of that, being a teenager or young person, I don't even know if I was a teenager, yeah, at the time, was a really cool concept because I could just stream porn. And yeah, the internet was a thing. I know that. But this was before I got into like the XXX stuff. You know what I'm saying? It was that gradual increase. I stumbled upon Nymphomaniac thinking that it was a porno and watched it and became so enthralled with it that I immediately watched the part 2 and watched them back to back. It's like 4.5 hours.
Yeah, it is.
But I watched it and I was like, oh my God, this is really fucking good. That was the first Lars von Trier movie that I watched. And the second one was Antichrist, which I wrote my entire senior paper in the same style as Antichrist. I like Lars von Trier a lot, if you can't tell. But yeah.
The Nymphomaniac series and Antichrist are the only movies I've seen by him that I can immediately think of.
Melancholia.
Oh, I've seen that one as well. Which I'm pretty sure all of those I watched because you recommended them.
Well, they all came around the same time in his Depression era. I think those were his 3 Depression movies, and they're really, really good. The House that Jack Built's really, really good.
The dog scene in it's what got me.
That is what got that scene.
Yeah, that's the only thing about The House that Jack Built that bothered me.
If you've never seen this movie, There is a. I'm not going to spoil anything because if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A really fucked up hunting scene, and you think the dog scene.
So I just want to put a trigger warning for anyone who's about to watch The House That Jack Built. There is a scene that involves a dog that is heartbreaking compared to the rest of the movie, which is very light and mild.
No.
Yes.
Bailey, we're gonna lose so many viewers. That is an intense movie. That is not for the faint of heart, and it is not something that you seek that movie out. That movie doesn't seek you out.
No, you guys should go look for it. It's a super fun movie.
No, it is. I like it. It's a fun movie.
No, I do. I think it's a good movie. It's not my favorite, but the dog scene, bro.
Fuck you.
And is there anything else you have today, Taylor?
No, you've ruined it with the dog scene.
Well, with that being said, I've been Bailey, and this has been Two Idiots, One Podcast. Do you have anything else you want to say, Taylor?
You just said that and you fucked up the ending.
Right, but I didn't know if you wanted to say something like, you know, you can send us an email at twoidiotsonepodcast2022@gmail.com if you think that we're idiots and you want to talk shit.
No, because nobody ever sends us any fucking emails. Have we ever got one email?
We've not gotten an email yet in all 30 plus episodes we've released. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't still put the email out there in case people want to email us.
If that's a thing, you can do that. If not, you can send us a DM on social media. We're active on everything. That seems to be the most common way that people are interacting with us is through social media.
It's the only way I've been interacted with by fans.
Yeah, so if you're a fan and you're like, oh, I want to get to know you guys. I want to buy you a big steak dinner and talk to you about The Godfather. I just say that because you don't like that.
The Godfather is my least favorite mob movie.
Yeah, that's why I know you don't like mob movies.
I like Donnie Brasco.
Anyway, if you're a fan that wants to get to know us a little bit more, feel free to reach out on social media. You know, you can comment on a post. We'll interact with it. I feel like we're pretty sensible people.
Yeah, and most of the mean things we say on here is just jokes to make you guys get the case of the giggles. We're actually both really pleasant in person.
Unless we're talking to each other. I mean, we do say mean things to each other.
Yeah. I mean, do you hear Taylor talking right now? Just in general? Unbelievable.
We had to do the Taylor talk because your Bailey's babbles didn't make fucking sense.
That's just because the way time flows on the podcast and the way time flows outside the podcast don't necessarily coincide the way one would think they would.
There is no time on the podcast.
And with that being said, this has been Two Idiots, One Podcast. I'm Bailey.
And I'm Taylor, and thank you so much for listening.
Have a very good evening, morning, or afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.